Today on the bench, I have new guitar day. This is a really special guitar for me because I've been waiting 15 years. Okay, so what we have is the new S2 Custom 2408. Okay, but why am I saying I waited 15 years for this guitar? So the story goes like this. In 2009, I was invited to go to PRS's factory. In fact, they called me and said, can we fly you and your wife out next Wednesday? And we went. We had no idea where we're going. And when we got there, we did a factory tour. Essentially, us and a bunch of other people were flown in to talk about guitars and the industry. When I was walking the factory, it was a little embarrassing story. I remember picking up an unfinished Custom 24. It was just sitting there. It was neck glued in the body, didn't have any hardware, and it didn't have any finish on it. And I picked it up and I said, hey, Paul, because Paul Smith was doing the tour. I said, man, if you could do this guitar and just give me an arm carve and maybe some P90 pickups, I would just be super happy. And he said, let me give you the fast answer. No, but I'll think about it. 15 years later, here it is. Now I know what you're thinking, but the S2s came out a long time ago, 2013, in fact. As a response to the recession. That's where the S2s came from. I don't know if you know. Let's talk about that. S2 stands for Stevensville 2 because they're made in Stevensville, Maryland, and they are the second line of USA made guitars, and they are made to be more affordable. In fact, when they came out in 2013 and to this day in 2024, they are half the price of their counterparts, the Core series, made in the same factory. Why is this one so special? Well, because it's when they did the original S2 Custom 24 with the arm carve, I was super excited, except for I wanted the pattern thin. It came pattern regular neck. So I was super excited when they came out with the Paul Reed Smith S2 2408 with the pattern thin neck, but I'd already fallen in love with the TCI pickups, so I was thinking about getting the Paul's guitar. I've always loved the TCI pickups that are in Paul's guitar. We talk about it a lot. These to me have the throatiness and the clarity of a P90, but they're noiseless, and when you coil split them, they go single coil mode without dropping a ton of volume. And as you guys know, I really like having a single, like kind of default position to the neck. And that allows me to do this. What you have is you have a volume, a tone, and a three-way switch. And then you have two mini switches that let you coil split each pickup. And this is absolutely one of my favorite PRS colors. Can you guess why? Let's get into the geeky stuff. We have a nitrocellulose lacquer finish. Now I believe that not only is it the same finish they're putting on the Core guitars, that I do know is true, but I think what they do is, I think they shoot like an acrylic finish and then they put the nitro on top of it. I could be totally wrong, but I've talked about this in the past that their nitro finish doesn't feel the same to me as Gibson and Fender. I don't say better, I don't say worse, it just feels different, and that could be something they're doing. They're usually pretty secretive about their finishes, but maybe somebody knows in the comments. You can put a comment down below. You have the Paul Reed Smith bridge. The bridge on the S2s are different than the Cores. Let me tell you what's different. First of all, the saddles are cast metal and they're not brass like they are on the Core. The tremolo block is also cast metal and not machined out of one piece of brass like the Core model. This bridge is also the same bridge they're using in the PRS Import SE series. So the S2s and the SEs share the same bridge, which is about $105 US, where the Core model has its own bridge, like I said, that has brass saddles and brass block. It sells for over $300. So it's a big difference in price. Now, what they do have in common is they're using the same screws. So they're using 6 screws that have a notch, which runs the perimeter of the screw. It lets the knife edge sit on all 6 screws, which helps the vibrato system stay in tune when using it. I've said this before, I like the steel block and the steel saddles over the brass. It's just a preference. I like the brass one too, but I like this one a little bit more. You have the three-way switch we talked about. This is not a push-pull because you have the 2 switches. These are zero or low friction potentiometers. So they feel really easy to adjust, especially with the lampshade knobs that let you kind of, your hand just kind of grab them. Then we have a rosewood fretboard with 24 nickel silver frets. And as I've always pointed out, if you see the owl, there's the birds. And if you see the owl, that means you have 24 frets. So you always look for that extra bird. And if you don't see it, that means it's 22. It's a nice way to see from a distance. So let's talk about some of the things that makes this S2 less expensive or different than the Core. First off, the back plates are not recessed into the body. They're laying on top. You have a set neck and you have a 3-piece mahogany neck. In the past, I've shown you how manufacturers do scarf joints, but in this case, I'm going to show you actual footage right here of them making an S2 neck. This is exactly how this neck was put together. And as usual, when they make a scarf joint, they're gluing on the heel because obviously the piece of wood isn't thick enough Now, something cool is they use the same one-piece mahogany block for the body. In fact, they don't even sort them differently than the core models, and they're using the same thickness. Now, although they share the same mahogany body, they have completely different maple caps. The Core has a 2-inch maple cap that's book matched, and the S2 has a 1-inch maple cap that's book matched, and they don't pick the better flame tops for the S2s. This S2 still comes with the proprietary nut that they use on the Core, which is a graphite nut with brass in it. They actually mix brass, like brass shavings, graphite, other materials to make their own proprietary nut. Then you have the locking Paul Reed Smith keys. These are going to be the closed gears. This one comes with a deluxe gig bag, and they've improved the gig bag a little bit. Still looks reminiscent of the last one, but I think it's a little bit nicer. Let's talk about how it came. So out of the box, this came with actually really good action. Usually we're used to seeing them be about 2 millimeters off the 12th fret. This one's sitting in at 1.5, which is pretty low for PRS, so I enjoy that very much. Intonation, of course, was perfect out of the box. Something else PRS likes to pride themselves on is the fit and finish. So let's play all the notes real quick. Okay, no dead notes, which is what we kind of expected from Paul Reed Smith. They really put a lot of time into their fretwork, especially the USA made ones. Okay, so let's take a look at how well they polish the frets. So what we want to do is just go ahead and do some bends, but try not to hit the note so you can kind of listen to the fret a little bit. These are not scratchy, but not, I mean, they're nice, but they're not super glassy. What I mean by that is they're nice, but I've actually seen Cores and S2s a little bit smoother. I don't necessarily feel the need to polish these, but I'm used to not hearing anything on these. So again, that could be just the handwork. Let's go ahead and check the fret ends. We do that with the sock test. So what I use is, if you ever went to a shoe store, you see these little boxes of footies. And so a footie is just a sock that it's easy for me to demonstrate how the fret ends feel. So there you go. That's definitely I want to give it a 5 out of 5, but technically it could be a 4.5 out of 5. There's a little bit of there where it didn't catch. As you can see, you can barely see it, but maybe it wasn't as perfect on the treble side. And that's definitely a 5 out of 5. Yeah, but that's now. What about in a week or two? Well, here's what's easy. On average, it's different for each one, so I'll tell you what it is for this one, but just, for all the other videos. On average, we have the guitar here for a month before we start the deep dive, filming and stuff, all the stuff we go through. This guitar has been here for about 3 weeks. Obviously, it's had time to acclimate to my very dry environment in Arizona, and still no fret sprout. Now, something to be concerned about is that's really important, because on a guitar like this, you don't want fret sprout. Not only because you don't want it, period, but you really don't want it on guitars like this, where the gloss finish is coming all the way up to the top of the fretboard. Now, I've had on the older Paul Reed Smith guitars, the S2s, where the finish started lifting away from the fretboard. The fretboard shrank, and the fret started pushing the finish. And the finish was a little hard, like plastic. And it kind of didn't feel very pleasant, and you had to smooth and sand it. And I did that to my S2 single cut. Now, what I've experienced with all of the new S2s that I've reviewed, which is about a half a dozen or so, maybe a few more, the new nitro finish seems to be, I don't know if flexing is the right word, but it's definitely not letting the frets push it off. I'm not seeing any separation. We take the same sock, and then we see if there's anything catching it on the bridge. If you're playing, maybe, sometimes players have an issue with something on the edge of the bridge poking right about there. Some people say it's palm muting. Sometimes it's not even palm muting. Sometimes just the movement, where you pick, even if you're sitting on the strings, you just kind of find it, the spot. So 2 things I need to point out that's important. One, that there's no spot right there. The second thing is that this PRS is more like the Core than ever before. Something that may be silly to some, but I think it's pretty cool. PRS also makes a point to make special pickup frames that recess the screws. Sometimes you guys know right there, the adjustment screw for the pickup can kind of catch you and scratch you. None of that's right there. So if that stuff bothers you, some players it doesn't bother at all. Some players it can literally make it unsufferable. It's just everybody's different. This one, like the other one, has a aluminum truss rod cover that says custom on it, and then it also has S2 etched in there as well. Paul Reed Smith logo it's obviously a decal stuck onto the headstock. This does not receive the rosewood veneer that you would see on the cores. Again, things they've done to differentiate the cores, not only by the cuts and stuff, but by features and aesthetic features like that. Let's go ahead and give you some measurements. That's going to be important. Okay, sitting at the nut, we are sitting at 43.01 millimeters for the nut. We have the 12th fret, 52.54 millimeters on the 12th fret. You also have 2.068. Thickness at the first fret is 21.37 millimeters. We are at 0.852. And on the 12th fret, we are at 24.85 millimeters, or 0.978. Dimensions wise, it's going to line up with a 90s era Fender Strat. However, if I compare the two, you can see it's just a little bit wider, and it's only around the first fret that it does this. As you get to the 12th fret, kind of lines back up with a Fender C-shaped neck again. So what's important now is talking about these pickups. Okay, so what we did is we've used the multimeter. We've plugged it into the 6-inch guitar cable, plugged into the output jack. So we're looking at the bridge pickup, which is reading at 8.18K. Let's coil split that and see what happens. We drop down to 5.51K. That's nice. Going to the neck pickup, we're sitting at 7.13. We coil split that. We drop it down to 4.42. So very cool. For those that want the inductance on the neck pickup is 4.24 or 25, and the bridge pickup is 5.34. Like a lot of the Paul Reed Smith pickups, very vintage voiced. Let's go ahead and look inside this. So looking in, first thing we want to point out is that the back plate is shielded with copper. There is also copper foil or copper tape here going down and going to the volume pot. Then you have this treble bleed right here. So they install the treble bleed. And then you have the two coil splits right here. Check that out. Then you have the capacitor for the tone control, and then the three-way switch, and what looks like conductive shielding paint. This is something that came up on a review a couple reviews ago at PRS. Somebody said they don't use conductive shielding paint. So let's verify what this is. So if you want to know if the paint in the guitar cavity is conductive in any way, and yes, there is conductivity. Something else that came up in the last video is, are they upgrading the electronics and the pickups? Yes, this is all the same electronics you would see in the core models now. So S2s have the same level of electronics and pickups as core. So let's look at the previous model and see how it compares. Looking in the electronics cavity, we have a 500K made in Korea potentiometer right here. We also have a 500K made in Korea potentiometer for the tone pot. And then we also have, if you look over here, we have a treble bleed. You also have two mini switches, which these are the coil splits that they use for each pickup. So you can coil split each one individually. And of course, a three-way switch. So it's very obvious to see that Paul Reed Smith has upgraded the S2s to the core electronics and giving a little bit more details to make it exactly like the core. As I mentioned earlier, these guitars are about half the price of the cores. This one's $2,349, but for reference, you can get the Paul Reed Smith SE2408 for $949. Let me know in the comments if you think PRS should update the SEs now to have the features of this new S2 and core guitar. The weight, this one is 7.5 pounds, 7.52 pounds. Right now is a good time to mention that if you've learned something so far in this video, or if you like the video, you can subscribe and maybe hit the like button. Okay, so let's get some sound samples. I'm running through a Fender 65 Deluxe Reverb head into a 112 cabinet with a creamback. I'm mic'd up with an SM57 and a room mic, and later we'll run a pedal through it. But right now I just want to go through some of my favorite tones of the guitar, starting with the neck pickup in the full humbucker mode. Okay, let's go ahead and coil split that. Ready? Let's go ahead and go to the middle position. gonna be middle position with 2 humbuckers. Okay, let's go ahead and coil split both those. Watch what happens now. One last setting I wanted to show you that I really like is the bridge humbucker neck single coil, middle position, so you're running both pickups. Here we go. So now what I'm doing is I'm using just a light overdrive OD11 with some delay. And I'm going to start again on the neck pickup in the humbucker mode. Here we go. Just sounds great. Let's go to the coil split, the neck pickup. Watch what happens. Love that. Bridge position, humbucker. Coil split the bridge. Gets a little snarl going. I love the Custom 24 neck, the pattern thin, and the pattern thin. And I love just this. This is the perfect guitar for me. And I thought about over the years just putting some P90s in one of the S2s, and I never got to it. I just never got around to it. And so when I played Paul's guitar, when I reviewed his guitar, the Core and the SE, I just remember thinking I really like those pickups, and maybe that's an option. Maybe try to fit some of those into a Custom 24. So this is everything that I love about the Mira, everything I love about the Custom 24, everything I love about the S2 series, Paul's pickups, all put into one. It's a perfect guitar, and you know, looking back, it kind of made me chuckle when I was like thinking when they announced this, I was thinking, wow, that's what I wanted back in 2009. And as always, thank you for your time. Till the next time, know your gear.